Yeah, what you think that sentence means out of the Olivet Discourse will go a long way in determining your view of end time prophecy. Let me show you something. In the background, there's a photo. Let me bring that forward. That's actually an artificial intelligence, an AI rendering of the tribulation. Someone asked that particular AI chatbot or whatever they're called to make an image of the tribulation. And so, according to the AI, apparently the tribulation is going to be filled with clusters of dirt-filled tornadoes going down lonely country roads. There it is. Now, I don't know who the guy is. I don't know. I guess he's left behind, according to the AI there. I don't know. Well, wait a second. He does look familiar. Who is that? Oh, that's your pastor. That's your pastor. Yeah, what is he saying? Why am I still here? Yeah, he still can't figure it out. What? What happened to your Lexus? Oh, the AI switched out your car, gave you an AMC Pacer from 1980. Oh, that's a bad day for you, pal. Tell you what, I'll give you a nice red sports car. How does that sound? How does that sound? What? Does it come in purple? Oh, fine, here it is in purple. I tell you what, I won't make you go through the AI tribulation alone. I'm going to give you a doggy. That's your new doggy, Sammy. He'll be with you through the tribulation. Now, I'm not making fun of the tribulation. It's serious business, but the AI tribulation, please, I don't care what any artificial intelligence thinks about the tribulation. Truth be told, I don't care what anybody in the church thinks about end time prophecy, because I know they're deceiving us. They're leaving out important information, and you've been asked to make important decisions about end time prophecy, and you didn't have all of the information because they kept it from you. That's the truth. Now, either I'm crazy and falsely accusing them, or something in the church is terribly wrong. Let you decide, because I'm going to show you what they did to us, and it's unconscionable. There is absolutely no reason honest people would do what they did to you and me. Now, I broke free from it 3 years ago, and the sooner you break free from it, the better, because the day is coming. He is coming for his church, but that day doesn't look a single thing like Tim LaHaye told you it looked like, or any of them. And you better get to the truth quickly, because time is running out. And the more time you waste coming to the truth is lost time you could be helping your family and friends. Because on that day, the last thing you want to hear is from one of your loved ones, what's going on? What's going on? What's happening? And you could have told them, but you rejected it. Now, for those of you who go, oh, are we going to have to listen to this again? You say A and they say B. Look, it'll all play out the way it's supposed to. Just let it happen. That is not a Christian perspective. That's not part of our faith. He told us to be awake and engaged and watching over and over and over. If that's your opinion about end time prophecy, do me a favor, get out of here. I don't want you here, because what you're bringing to this channel is not Christian, and I don't want it. Oh, you're not very nice. Well, I tell you what, if you knew me, you'd think I was. But I know what's coming, and you aren't going to receive it. And you are not going to be part of the solution. And you are in danger. But I will at least tell you the truth. I will not hold information back from you. All right, let's begin with something we can all agree on. The most bare-boned prophecy timeline that you could imagine. Now, this is a timeline for futurists only, okay? We don't attempt to persuade preterists. That isn't even worth our time. We don't attempt to persuade historicists like the Seventh-day Adventists believe, because it's not worth our time. We don't attempt to persuade idealists because it's not worth our time. The people that allegorize everything in the book of Revelation, not interested. They're so far lost, I can't help them. Futurists are on the right track, but you can still be dead wrong inside the futurist point of view. I'm a futurist. You're a futurist. The church you go to, most likely futurist. Most evangelical churches in America and around the world are futurists. That's what we're dealing with here. This is a futurist timeline that we can all agree on. I can agree with people like Dr. John Walvoord, the former head of the Dallas Theological Seminary and considered by many to be the modern-day architect of the pre-trib rapture position. We can all agree on this. At some point in the future, the beast is going to rise, and the beast system will begin. And at some point after that, the final coming. The church calls it the second coming. I would call it the third coming, but so let's call it the final coming, where he defeats the beast. Satan is chained, and he sets up the millennial kingdom. So these are two events in the correct order. All sorts of things in between there. What's the timeline between the beast coming up and the final coming? Well, it's really kind of up to you. I know the general rule of thumb, and it's just a general rule of thumb, is 7 years. But some people may say it's 3.5 years. It's a short amount of time. That's the basic core principle of the futurist position. And post-trib people would adhere to this. So would pre-wrath, mid-trib, and pre-trib. We're all in agreement, okay? And then you stick the rapture somewhere in here depending on your particular flavor. If you're pre-trib, you're going to stick it toward the left, maybe even before the beast rises. If you're post-trib, you're going to put it at the very end on the right, at the coming, okay? So there's going to be differences and variations with the rapture. But the overall picture here without the rapture is something we can all agree on because we believe these are future events. Okay. Now, having seen that, we're going to switch for a second to the Olivet Discourse because you got to do something with it. You have to. It's his great prophecy teaching. Now, I'm going to show you what your church does with it and what everybody in the futurist point of view does with it. And then I'm going to show you what he has shown us on this channel. And then you can make a decision. But at least you're going to get the full information. They won't give you the full information. Let's go to the Olivet Discourse. So, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, the sanctuary, let the reader understand. Just a quick insert here. He's pointing to Daniel because Daniel is the only other author, prophet. Our Lord was much more than a prophet, of course, but Daniel was a prophet, and he's the only other person in the Bible that uses that term, abomination of desolation. He's saying, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Daniel talks about this. This is not some spiritualized version that some people will say today. Oh, we're the temple of God, so it's going to be something that stands in the church or... No. The Old Testament prophet Daniel is talking about when the temple is desecrated. When someone goes into the sanctuary who does not belong there, only priests were allowed in the sanctuary. Only the chief priest was allowed in the Holy of Holies, part of that sanctuary. Now he's talking about that. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas for women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infants in those days. Pray that your flight may not be in winter or on a Sabbath, because the Jews had Sabbath traveling laws. For then, at that time, that's what then means. That's what then means. At that time, there will be great tribulation, such has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. And then he goes on to say, and if those days weren't shortened, nobody would survive. He's talking about the tribulation. So what did he just tell us? When you see the abomination of desolation, get ready. The tribulation is about to happen. And if you're in the area and you see the abomination of desolation, you need to get out of the Jerusalem area to save yourself, and do it quickly. So we now see that that he's talking about, the tribulation begins at the abomination of desolation, is connected to this sentence just a few sentences later in the Olivet Discourse. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, it says, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light and the stars of heaven will fall to the earth and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming. All three versions of the Olivet Discourse have that. Powers of the heaven will be shaken, then they'll see the Son of Man. So he's saying immediately after the tribulation of those days, he's referring back to the abomination of desolation. Everybody understands that. So what do you do with that? Well, here's what the church does with that. Here's what everybody from post-trib to pre-trib does with this. They pick it up. Let's go to our timeline, okay, that we kind of all agreed on, and they put it here. They say, Jesus is talking about the final coming. When he talks about his coming, it's the final coming. So we need, and it's connected to the abomination of desolation, so we need the third temple where the beast who rises out of the sea will go in and desecrate the temple. That's the standard view from post-trib to pre-trib, okay? That's what most of you were taught. And why wouldn't you believe that? Well, you believe that, but you believe that without having all the information. They kind of left some things out that you should have considered. Now, we're going to show you what you weren't taught. And then you're going to have to try and figure out, why didn't they tell me? Okay? Because that's what's going on here, deception in the church when it comes to prophecy. Now, in this view of what you've just done to the Olivet Discourse, the signs of his coming become irrelevant to you, right? Because they're at the very end. When he says in the Olivet Discourse, right before the coming, he says, and there will be signs in sun, moon, and stars, and on earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, and so on. That's related to this coming. Doesn't affect you. So you disregard now the signs. That's why they're never taught in the church. They have no meaning, no position. Even post-trib people say, well, yeah, there's going to be signs at the very end, but at the very end. Pre-trib people say the same thing. Yeah, but they're not for us. That's at the very end. The rapture happens way before then. So we don't need to pay attention to the sign, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? When you consider everything that will be going on then, that you would still need signs to tell you that time is running out. I mean, for crying out loud, you have the beast and the beast system and the false prophet. You've seen the two witnesses. You got the 144,000. You've had trumpet after trumpet after trumpet. You've had the seven thunders. You're getting the seven bowls of wrath, but you still need some signs to let you know that the end is near. Okay, but that's where they put it. That's where you've placed it. That's because you didn't have the opportunity to know everything. And they left something important out. Two things, actually. I know this is wrong where they've placed the Olivet Discourse events, because at his coming, we are told right beforehand, the powers of the heavens will be shaken. That is war in heaven. He is coming. His appearance is at the conclusion of war in heaven, because Satan has to be thrown down to earth before he can bring out the beast. That's the first thing practically he does when he is cast down. And you can read all about it in chapter 12 of the book of Revelation. He is cast down and he goes to the shore of the sea and he brings forth the beast. The beast will not begin is run until war in heaven has taken place. The coming of our Lord is at war in heaven. He is coming, two reasons: to throw Satan and his angels out of heaven, down to earth. They already have access to earth, but now they will no longer have access to heaven. Satan will no longer be the power of the air, as he's referred. He is earthbound, and he's mad. But the Lord is also coming to take his church. That's why he is sending out his angels at that time to gather his elect. It's a massive, massive day. And that's why, for me and people who see this as truth, the signs are very important because we need them. We don't have any way of knowing how close to the end we are without those signs. We need those signs. They're very important. The church doesn't want the signs. That's why they rejected the Revelation 12 sign. They didn't want to bring that onto the table, because then you would have been saying, well, wait, Pastor, this is what he talked about in the Olivet Discourse. Yeah, but that's the second coming. Those signs are for the second coming. Yeah, but the Revelation 12 sign is a sign made up of sun, moon, and stars, just like he said to look for. No. Forget about that. Hey, let's just forget about the Revelation 12 sign completely. They didn't want any part of it. They didn't even want to introduce the topic. But to me, for those of us who see this as truth, the coming is at war in heaven. We need those signs, and we've already seen one of them. But that begs then the question, okay, Stan, what are you going to do with the abomination of desolation? Do you not agree that the abomination of desolation has to take place before his coming? Yes, I do. So, Stan, are you saying that a temple has to be built between now and then so that the abomination of desolation can take place? No, I'm not. Well, then, what is this abomination of desolation? It already happened. See, this is the other thing they won't tell you. They won't tell you two things. First of all, they won't tell you that this could be war in heaven. They won't even broach the topic. You have never in your life heard a pastor tell you, look, we teach this as cosmic disturbance, but just so you know, if that is actually war in heaven, we would really have to readjust our thinking about end-time prophecy. You have never heard a single one of them ever tell you that. They don't tell you that this could be war in heaven. Book of Revelation is telling us, oh, yes, it is. And I've gone over that on many videos. This is war in heaven, and they will not even mention that to you. But they're also keeping something else from you. Unless you are a frequent visitor to this channel, or unless you just happen to have come across a very honest pastor or teacher somewhere out there, you don't know, and you were never told about the abomination of desolation that took place in that first century temple that Jesus was standing in front of on the Mount of Olives when he just told them that the temple is coming down. The disciples ask, tell us about that. And in the process, he says, so when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, the church will never tell you that abomination of desolation took place in that temple. Why won't they tell you? Because if they told you that an abomination of desolation took place in that temple, you're going to start to wonder, well, wait a second. This part of Jesus's prophecy sermon may have already taken place. He says to watch for an abomination of desolation. And if the next one was in the first century, and it was almost 3.5 years worth of an abomination of desolation from 66 AD to the 9th of Av, 10th of Av by Roman reckoning, 70 AD, you would say to yourself, well, maybe he was talking about that temple as opposed to a third temple. They don't want your mind wandering into that avenue. They want you on their reservation. Listen to what we're telling you. It's in the third temple. And so they completely leave out the abomination of desolation that took place in that temple that Jesus was standing in front of. How in the world is it ever appropriate for honest theologians to hold information back from you regarding an abomination of desolation, one of the most hideous acts anyone could ever perpetrate? They do not mind telling you about Antiochus Epiphanes and his abomination of desolation, do they? No, because that took place 167 years before Christ was born, or 167 to 170 years before Christ was born. That abomination of desolation took place in 167 BC. They don't care about that one. They'll tell you about that one. That didn't bother them. They will not tell you about the one that happened in the first century. Ask yourself, has any prophecy teacher or any pastor in any church service, whether you were there in person or listening on the radio or TV, ever told you about the abomination of desolation that took place in that temple? And the answer is no. 99.9% of all people on planet Earth who self-identify as Christians have not the slightest clue that that took place in that temple, because they all keep their mouths shut about it. And yet you see how important it is for us to get this right. I went through before this video and looked at all of the notes in the MacArthur Study Bible about the Olivet Discourse, all three versions, Mark 13, Matthew 24, Luke 21. He never, and he teaches a very classic rendition of the futurist pre-trib rapture position, very similar to what is taught by all the guys that come out of the Dallas Theological Seminary and other seminaries. He never once mentions the abomination of desolation that took place in that first century temple, does not mention it. Let me show you what Dr. John Walvoord of the Dallas Theological Seminary says about that. This is in his official writing, in his official teaching of the Olivet Discourse. Well, wait, before I show you that, I don't want to forget this, because I know how people are. This topic makes them mad and they're going to claim certain things. No, I'm not a preterist. You cannot be a preterist and believe the beast and his system and the false prophet and all of that is future. You can't be a preterist and believe the two witnesses are future, the trumpets are future, whatever the seven thunders are future, the bowls of wrath are future, Armageddon is future. That is not preterism. Do not call me a preterist. I am not. But your inclination, and for some of you, is you're so mad you want to insult me. I'm not. Number two, the guy that perpetrated the abomination of desolation is not, N-O-T, not the beast. He is like another Antiochus Epiphanes, a very evil man who showed up and had his 15 minutes of infamy inside that temple. The difference was that guy was Jewish. The one who performed the abomination of desolation in the temple in the first century was Jewish. He is not the beast. He is not the Antichrist, but he is the one that fulfilled this prophecy of our Lord. Now, let me show you what Dr. John Walvoord says about it. Now, again, to remind you, he's just like everybody else. He picked up the entirety of the Olivet Discourse and moved it into the end. Here in this section, he's talking about the abomination of desolation. The fact is that the temple was destroyed in AD 70, but was not preceded by any abomination or desecration such as Daniel relates to the second coming of Christ. Now, at first glance, it almost appears that he just said there was no abomination of desolation in the temple that was destroyed in 70 AD. No, that's not what he's saying. He's being slyer than that. He will not talk about the abomination of desolation that took place in that temple in 70 AD, specifically from 66 AD to 70 AD. What he's saying here is it doesn't match up with the second coming. It's not prophetically important. So we're going to disregard that. There's nothing to see here in the first century. Yes, the temple was destroyed, but there's nothing really prophetically interesting about what went on in there. Well, of course, that's pure garbage. That's according to him, because he's picked the whole thing up and moved it out of its place. That's because he does not believe, or will allow himself to believe, he's dead now, to have believed that this is war in heaven. He disregards that as well. If he didn't, he would see how important that abomination of desolation was in that temple. And you better give it some real consideration. Again, this abomination of desolation was the worst atrocity to have ever happened in either of the first two temples. Maybe there will be a third temple, but in the Olivet Discourse, he is talking about the temple he just walked out of. So when you see the abomination of desolation, okay, when did they see it? 66 AD, and it was followed by 3.5 years of perversion and filth until the day it was destroyed. But theologically, when you pick up the Olivet Discourse and move it out of its proper place, you ruin the main point of the discourse. The old covenant is going away. The temple is coming down. Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. And the replacement plan is introduced. The times of the Gentiles. This plan was and is an assault on Satan's kingdoms. And yes, the tribulation did begin at that time in the first century, because Satan had a vicious response to it and still does. The times of the Gentiles will end, but the tribulation continues on and becomes much worse when Satan is thrown down to earth at war in heaven. Now, the idea that the tribulation began in the first century is completely foreign to you, but it wasn't to the Apostle John, who writes in the first chapter of Revelation, I, John, your brother and partner in the tribulation. And at the sixth seal, when the church suddenly appears in heaven, we are told these are the ones coming out of the Great Tribulation. The Great Tribulation continues on, but the times of the Gentiles was just fulfilled. So when the Lord says in the Olivet Discourse, immediately after the tribulation of those days, what days? The times of the Gentiles. And boom, war in heaven and his appearance take place at that point. So in that short teaching, he shows us the beginning and the end of the times of the Gentiles. That is all he's interested in at that teaching. The book of Revelation shows us what follows, but none of us can make an informed decision of these things when the church isn't telling you all the facts. Why not? Why not? How could they not talk about that abomination of desolation? They never do. It's a fact. When I read Josephus, who was there, taken as prisoner by the Roman army, Vespasian and his son Titus, both generals, captured him and then moved to Jerusalem, and he was there during the siege. He knows what happened. And he, page after page after page, tells us what happened in that temple. And folks, nothing ever in either of the first two temples has ever happened like that. The longest running, most depraved abomination of desolation ever imaginable. It dwarfs what Antiochus Epiphanes did, and his was horrible. And his was horrible. Now, also understand, I'm not saying that there can't be a third temple. I honestly don't know. Maybe there will be. But in the Olivet Discourse, he's talking about that abomination of desolation. And you better believe the Christian Jewish followers understood that. And when that abomination of desolation happened, they got out. Eusebius, an early church historian, tells us that happened. They got out. They ran out and they went to Pella in Greece, a few miles from Thessalonica. They understood. None of them stood around and said, yeah, I know there's an abomination of desolation going on. I know the daily sacrifices ended. I just don't think that's the one he's talking about. I don't think we should leave. We should wait for the next one. No. This is the one he was talking about, and they left. If you have picked this up and moved it into the future where it does not belong, your understanding of end times is going to be warped, and you're not going to be watching for the signs that he gives of his coming, which will take place at war in heaven before the beast is brought up out of the sea. And you will not know the importance of the day that's going to take place on. A day that the Lord likens to the flood and Noah's time, or to Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah, the day he tells you do not be like Lot's wife on that day. The church is not preparing us for that day because they picked it up and moved it where it didn't belong. The entirety of the Olivet Discourse. The only way they can pull this theft off is by keeping secret the abomination of desolation that did in historical fact take place in the first century. You need to get your head around that and see what they've done. They've manipulated us into believing what they wanted us to believe as opposed to the truth. And it's wrong. I wish I could get one of these pastors in a deposition. I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I'd like to get them in a deposition where they've sworn to tell the truth and just ask them. Just ask to reveal their lie that has damaged the church, that is not preparing the church for the signs or the kind of day that is coming. Just ask them. You're under oath, Pastor. How long have you been shepherding a church? 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 years, depending on which pastor I have. Okay. Yes or no, Pastor? Did an abomination of desolation take place in the temple that Jesus called his Father's house, commonly known as the Second Temple? Did an abomination of desolation take place in that temple in the first century, around 66 AD to 70 AD? Yes or no? Pastor? Yes. Do you know the name of the person who perpetrated it? Yes. What was his name? John of Gischala. What is Gischala, Pastor? Well, it might be pronounced Gischala. It was a town in Galilee. And that's where John was from. Yes. And he was Jewish. Yes. Did he desecrate the temple? Pastor? Yes. How many sermons have you given during your ministry? Oh, I don't know. 100? 1,000? Oh, it's 1,000 at least. How many times to a congregation did you mention John of Gischala and the abomination of desolation that took place in that temple? Never. I'm sorry? Never. And then the question, why not?